Our reporter Chriselda Lewis is outside court. She's bringing us the latest, so let's cross to her. Chriselda, good afternoon. It's an unexpected start to the trial. What do you make of the court's decision to drop one charge of culpable homicide against Duduzane?
Well, I think of crucial importance at this hour is what we've just heard conclude in the court. One of the survivors of that accident in 2014 involving the car of former President Jacob Zuma's son, Duduzane, had told us inside this court that she saw Duduzane speeding on the day of the accident. What Matron Mdagane, who was one of the survivors of this crash, has just told this court, you'd recall, she had also testified in the inquest in 2014, which found that Duduzane was reckless and negligent on the day of the accident. She told this court that she had seen from the side of the taxi which she was traveling in together with the two deceased, that she saw Duduzane Zuma's car speeding, and that there had been puddles of water in the middle of the road, and that while she had screamed out to the taxi driver as well, who had earlier testified that she had screamed to the taxi driver that whether he could see that there was a black vehicle that was not too far from the taxi that had been speeding towards their direction and would seem it was going to hit the taxi. So that is what Matron Mdagane, one of the survivors of the accident, told this court. But she was also in cross-examination. The defense really tried to discredit her testimony, because you'd recall during this particular testimony she told the Randburg Magistrates Court that she had seen on the side of the vehicle, or had heard rather, a car that was braking. She said you could hear the brakes of a car, and she was questioned by the defense advocate Mike Helens SC, who said that she had never given that statement to the police, and it was the first time that this was actually coming out of court, that she had heard that there were brakes of a car that she'd heard from inside the vehicle just before it had hit the taxi. So she also went on to describe the survivor of this accident, went on to describe the scene, that accident scene itself, where she described one of the deceased, Phumzile Dube, lying with her chest just outside the window, one of the windows of the taxi, and how one girl who had supposedly been traveling with Phumzile Dube had basically shouted, asking Phumzile not to do this, basically trying to awaken her. And this is where Matron Mdagane, who just finished her testimony now, says she had told the young girl that this had been clearly Phumzile was losing her breath, and that she had already passed on, and that the young girl, she had asked the young girl to close Phumzile Dube's eyes, and basically she said that she could not do it, and then Matron Mdagane said she then proceeded to go and close the eyes of Phumzile Dube. But she's adamant that on the day of the accident that Duduzane Zuma had been speeding. You know that Duduzane Zuma has been saying since the very beginning that on that day there had been very bad weather, it had been raining quite excessively. He had hit a pool of water and subsequently lost control of his vehicle. So we're hearing now for the second time, the first instance during the inquest in 2014 from Matron Mdagane, one of the survivors of this accident. She claims that Duduzane Zuma was speeding at the time that this accident had taken place.
Now, Chriselda, certainly lots of emotional testimony that you've been exposed to today. You've been on the ground. I'm sure there's a lot of public reaction to the ruling. Can you give us some insight on the public reaction?
Not much of that at this stage outside court. We've only had one political party that has been here since the very beginning, Black First, Land First, of course, supporting Duduzane Zuma, saying that they believe that this is nothing but a political conspiracy. This has always been a ploy to get back at his father, who is the former President Jacob Zuma, who we were widely expecting here this morning due to the presence of the VIP protection unit, but that was not to be. But not much of that reaction from the public dynamic that we've seen. But what we're gauging at this point from the families who are not speaking to the media at this point is that they just want justice at the end of the day. 5 years later, since that accident on the 1st of February 2014, they believe that it is time that justice should be served. They believe that someone should be held responsible for the deaths of the 2 taxi passengers. You'd recall from the very first question that you asked me, it was quite a surprising starter to the trial this morning, where the state had announced that it was withdrawing one of the culpable homicide charges. Of course, this relating to the death of Nanke Mashaba, where they now say, pathologists, according to their report, it now seems that despite her having been hospitalized after the accident, her death was as a result of a precondition. So at this stage, I think the state is quite adamant it will proceed on trying to get Duduzane Zuma criminally liable for the death of Phumzile Dube, to which, of course, in 2014, that inquest had found he was reckless and negligent.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Yes, indeed. 5 years is a long time to get justice. Thank you very much indeed. That was our reporter, Chriselda Lewis, coming to us live from the Randburg Magistrates Court.